This is Cold, one of Fortnite's best players with 2 FNCS wins. But he wasn't very good at the start, so to find out exactly how he became the best, we need to go all the way back to the start of Cold's crazy story, which would begin in Chapter 1 around the time of the World Cup in Season X, where Cold would queue into his first tournament on April 27th of 2019, which was actually Week 3 of the World Cup qualifiers. And he really wouldn't do too good, but that was only his first tournament, and he knew that if he tried again, he might be able to do just a bit better. So in the next week of qualifiers, he would try harder, and he would actually manage to place within the top 300. And on top of this placement, he had already earned $175. Now, this was extremely early for Cold to get his first earnings, but it made him realize that he could actually make something happen with Fortnite, and instead of always just goofing around with his friends that weren't nearly as good as him, Cold would now start to focus a bit more on the tournaments. Now, the rest of the World Cup wouldn't really go his way, and unlike many other pro players we know today, Cold was definitely not heading to New York, but Cold wasn't really worried about this at all, and he just continued to have fun playing all of the tournaments. And while he wouldn't usually earn in them, sometimes he would, making $400 over the course of Trio FNCS at the end of Chapter 1. And then, heading into Chapter 2, Cold would continue to compete, but he would start to focus on competitive Fortnite even more, actively trying to do better. But he had a problem, and that was his ping, so he would try out Gear Up Booster for free. Now, Gear Up dramatically lowers your ping and totally fights packet loss, and if you've had bad internet like Cold did, Gear Up can lower your ping by 50 ms or more. Now, Gear Up also has a new feature where you can collect exclusive Twitch drops, and on top of that, it's used by countless pro players like Mero, Day, and Peterbot. Now, Gear Up is very easy to use, and it just takes a click of a button to optimize your connection, helping you to not play like this.
Oh my God,
and play like this instead.
Oh my God!
Anyways, it seems like all Cold's changes in practice had paid off, because just a couple tournaments into the chapter, Cold would place 73rd in a solo cash cup, earning him another $200. But he wouldn't stop here because he would continue to improve, trying to fine-tune his game, and it would pay off once again in the Winter Royale, where Cold managed to earn $850 this time. Now, at this point, Cold had earned a little over $1,600, which was way better than the majority of competitive Fortnite players. And this is truly where Cold decided that he was going to dedicate himself to Fortnite and try to make it to the top no matter how long or what it took. But his journey from this point wouldn't start out so easy, because just after earning $850, Cold went on quite the cold streak of not so good placements, earning him a grand total of $0. And this streak would really mess with Cold, but he wouldn't let it take him off the path to his goal, so he just continued to push forward. Now, this bad streak would last multiple seasons, taking us all the way into Season 4 of Chapter 2, where his streak would actually start to turn around, when Cold began to play with a player named Elite. Now, their breakthrough tournament would be the $1 Million Super Cup, where they would place second in the opens, and then 16th in the finals, earning Cold $750. His first earnings in what must have felt like forever. Anyways, it seemed like Cold had finally found a player he really liked teaming up with, and this player, of course, was Elite. But the only problem for them was that the FNCS game mode was trios for the rest of the year, and of course they were only a duo. So they began to look for a third player, and they stumbled across a player named Crypt that they actually liked quite a bit. So they decided to play a tournament together to see how they would do, and this tournament would be the second Frosted Frenzy. And here, Cold and his team would do great, earning $1,200 over all the days of the tournament. And this made Cold really want to continue to play with Crypt, and that's exactly what he would do. But Elite would decide to leave them for the next season, and during this time, Cold would try out a ton of different players, never really finding any notable success. But then in Season 7, Elite would come back to Cold and Crip, and it seemed like they would actually do quite well, but once again, they would fall short of the Grand Finals. Now, keep in mind at this point, Cold was just another competitive player, and was by no means a widely known player like he is today, and the reason for that, well, he just hadn't ever made a Grand Finals. So he knew he needed to learn as much as possible and put it to work in the next season, and he would do that by teaming up with a player by the name of Cease, a veteran in the Fortnite competitive community that was definitely one of the most knowledgeable players at the time. So with Cold learning so much from Cease, on top of the fact that he was grinding more than ever, Cold was bound to succeed this season. And he would do exactly that, having one of his best stretches of placements he ever had. Now, this streak of great placements would happen when Season 8's FNCS kicked off, and he would place 6th, 13th, 12th, 6th, and finally 10th place in the Trio Cash Cup, earning him $200 to end off this streak. Now, from here, Cold would continue to play quite well, and him and his trio would actually qualify to Grand Finals. And they wouldn't just be another team filling up the lobby, because they would actually manage to place 6th, earning Cold $1,500 in his first Grand Finals ever. And of course, this was by far Cold's best placement he ever had till this point. And little did Cold know, this crazy placement and success would foreshadow the future of his career. Anyways, from here, Cold stuck with that trio and they headed into Grand Royale, the final FNCS of Chapter 2. So Cold knew he needed to continue his success from last season and head into Chapter 3 on a high note. So he would dial in for Grand Royale, ultimately placing 5th, earning him $18,000, which was of course Cold's new best placement. But also, outside of his placements, he was really showing up in Zone Wars and just general fights and tournaments. And you'll see why this is important in just a second, because Chapter 3 would have a dual FNCS for the entire year, and Cold most likely would have played with Elite, but Scented, one of the world's most consistent players, reached out to him asking him to play. Now, Scented saw just how good Cold was at fighting, and he saw a bright future in the young Cold, and gave him an opportunity, which was quite bold as Scented was coming off arguably the best Chapter 2 performance on the region, with multiple second place finishes in Grand Finals. And of course, Cold took the offer to play with Scented, but that meant he would have to work harder than ever to show up for his new duo. Now, his readiness and skill showed because in the first 3 tournaments before their first FNCS kicked off, Cold would win all 3 of them, and this momentum would carry over into FNCS because him and Scented would steamroll through the qualifiers, making it straight to Grand Finals. But once the Grand Finals started, they would really struggle on the first day, and this made Cold realize how much was on the line. So he would play his absolute best the next day, bringing the duo all the way back to 5th place in Grand Finals, which was not only a great comeback, but also one of Cold's best placements, netting him 20 grand, and it only made sense for Cold and Scented to stick together after this. So they would head into the next season continuing to improve their chemistry and managing to win not 1, not 2, but 3 duo cash cups that season, netting them $1,800 each before FNCS even kicked off. And the momentum they had carried straight into FNCS, helping them to get into the Grand Finals and place 2nd. Now, this was quite the funny placement because Scented's 2nd place curse just continued, and if you know about it, you know, but on the real note, this was Cold's new best placement. And it really is crazy to just look back and compare where he is at this point versus just a year ago. Anyways, from here, everyone was certain that they were coming up on an FNCS win, but this wouldn't really happen. Now, if you know what happened with Scented during this time, then you know, and if you don't, you can watch this video where I interviewed him about it, but more or less, Scented just had the biggest hurdle in his career, and it severely affected him and his ability to perform. Now on top of this, in grand finals this season, a couple people really hated Scented after what had happened, and they went out of their way to grief Scented and Cold. So they only managed to place 25th in a season where they realistically would have won FNCS. Now of course this was a massive setback, and it pretty much halted Cold's momentum. And the worst part of all this is that Cold and Scented had qualified for the LAN event that would be taking place in November of that year. But now Scented had almost no motivation to play, and normally in a situation like this, most players would just give up. But Cold's Fortnite coach Sven convinced Scented to play for his teammate, and he managed to power through what was happening in his life, trying his best to forget about it while grinding more than ever for the LAN event and his teammate Cold. And against all odds it would pay off, because Cold and Scented actually managed to place 3rd against the best players in the world. Now this victory would be short-lived, because Scented needed to take a break from the internet, leaving Cold behind with no duo. So once again, Cold was in the position he was in just a couple of years ago, looking for the right teammate, but luckily this time he would find the perfect player rather quickly. Now this player would be Acorn, and I'm sure Cold had absolutely no idea of what he would go on to accomplish with Acorn, but he would see a glimpse of their future in one of their very first tournaments together, where they would win, earning $2,500 each, and this only made them want to win FNCS even more. So they put in all the work they possibly could together, playing every single scrim, and when FNCS Grand Finals rolled around, Cold was ready to show the world just how good he was.
Go, bro! Let's go, bro! Let's go! Wait, do you want me to turn it? Turn it!
So long, hey. Still hitting the mats.
Let's go!
Straight up, get the finish. Get mats, Bill.
So finally, Cold had just won FNCS, and this was truly a crazy moment for him, because he had come so far from his first earnings, struggling at points, playing with so many different players, while steadily improving the entire time all the way to an FNCS victory. And because Cold had built up such great discipline, he continued forward, not sitting on his high for too long, focusing in once again on the next FNCS at hand. And many people had Cold and Acorn as the favorite to win the next FNCS and go back to back, but something had happened that threw Cold off track. Now, there was a massive change in Fortnite, and this was the merge of the NA West and NA East servers into one big NA Central server. And for Cold and Acorn, this change meant that they would be competing against even more players than before, having to deal with some really good players coming over from NA West like Reet. Now, this massive change, of course, wasn't the only reason for Cold and Acorn not going back to back, but I guess they just didn't have the best weekend of Fortnite, placing 6th. Now, 6th place in FNCS Grand Finals is an absolutely great placement, but it just definitely wasn't what they wanted. So they would learn as much as they possibly could from their mistakes, ironing them out and continuing to practice, but unfortunately it wouldn't pay off this time, because once again they'd landed in 6th place. Now they would have to move on from this rather quickly because there was a LAN event that was coming up quite soon, and it would be taking place in Copenhagen this time, and of course Cold and Acorn would be a part of it, but they knew that they would be playing against the best players from all over the world. So they would learn a bunch of new strategies and practice even more. and all of the work they'd put in would pay off a bit, helping them to land in 7th place, netting them $120,000. But again, this just wasn't what they wanted, because they knew they wanted to win. So as Chapter 5 began, they thought that at some point all the work they'd been putting in has to pay off. So with all their experience together, they would head into the first FNCS of Chapter 5, retaining all the things they had learned in order to show everyone exactly who they were.
Let's go, bro! No, bro! Oh. Yeah, I got it. Good job. Now, let's go! Let's go, bro! Punch. 100, dead. Bonus. Now, let's go, bro!
So finally, all the work that didn't originally pay off, paid off. And Cold and Acorn had won FNCS Grand Finals for the second time. And Cold had proven to himself once again that his dedication and discipline came with a reward. Now from here, Cold and Acorn would continue to compete together, and they would manage to place 5th and 3rd in the following 2 FNCS Grand Finals, which are 2 great placements. And all of their placements in Chapter 5 had qualified them to the global LAN event that's going to be happening in Dallas in just a couple of weeks. Now, if Cold wins this LAN event, he will most definitely be cemented as one of the best players of all time. And just like Cold, Reet also has the chance to win globals, and you can watch his story right here.